Welcome, everyone, to another broadcast of The Soul of the Everyman on the Artist First Radio Network. All past shows are podcasts. Pick them up at artistfirst.com. We welcome your questions and comments. Please use DJ at artistfirst.com. And now here's your hosts, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man, and I'm Michael Lyons.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Margaret.
And we are just going to surrender to the now with integrity. That's what we're going to talk about tonight.
Mm-hmm.
You came up with yes, we are. You came up with a very interesting topic, I thought. And, oftentimes, just to give you a little bit of inside baseball to all you millions of fans out there, oftentimes we have a topic ready to go. We thought about it a few days ago or whatever. And sometimes those are good and sometimes they're not, or there are good ones and bad ones or less good ones. They're all good. But sometimes we get these kind of inspiration topics that come in sort of out of the blue. And sometimes those turn out to be the best. And I think this one is, without jinxing it, I think this is going to be a good one.
Oh dear. Okay.
So, just to let's start right off with the quote, because I think it'll just set us up. Unless you have some other thing in mind.
No. I think the quote is a good start. All right. Watch any plant or animal, and let it teach you. Acceptance of what is. Surrender to the now. Let it teach you being. Let it teach you integrity, which means to be one, to be yourself, to be real. Let it teach you how to live and how to die, and how not to make living and dying into a problem. Eckhart Tolle.
And one of my favorite words is what I twigged on in the middle of this, which is integrity. And why is it one of my favorite words? Because integrity is often conflated with many things, Margaret. People think of it as being sort of honest or sort of being forthright or whatever, some sort of equality. I have integrity, as though you can put it in your pocket and walk away with it. But it isn't any of those things. Integrity is something, and Tolle really captures it here. What he says, it means to be one, to be yourself, to be real, to keep it real. And that's why it's one of my favorite words, because, how can I say this? One of the things that I do, at least in my daily interactions with everybody, especially strangers, is I kind of start everybody off at the same spot. And so everyone knows that I'm an engineer and therefore I have my head sharpened at the end. So I start everybody off at the exact same spot. I start them off at kind of the middle ground of zero. I say, okay, I'm just going to approach this person sort of tabula rasa. I don't know who they are, what they're going to do. And the thing I'm kind of looking for, without saying as much, is to see how real they are. And the other way you can put this, you turn it the other way, you say, well, how phony are they? How much are they living in their head? How much do they want you to help them live in their head? How much of their conversation centers around their fantasies or their illusions? And how much of it you can actually talk to the person and evoke an actual response? And that's my sort of empirical definition of integrity. I'm kind of start them all out at zero. Say I don't know who you are, and I'll talk about it a little bit about later when I do know who they are. But when you don't know who a person is, in my opinion, it's best to just start out with zero. You don't know if you're walking up on a genius or on a madman or on somebody who can become your best friend in like 10 minutes, or who you never want to talk to again.
Right.
So you start there.
Right.
And the very first couple of words you begin to get a sense of whether or not these people are sort of living in some sort of fantasy land or some sort of echo chamber. And the other thing that I do, I know you don't do this necessarily, but I do, is I try to move my conversation to the point where I can communicate to them. And this can move around quite a bit. It can start off in one place and move to another place. Because if people reveal, sometimes people are shy, or they just don't, trust people right away. So they start you off in one spot. You're kind of talking about, I don't know, fishing or baseball or something stupid. But they can move if you give them a little bit of a listening opportunity, or you kind of give them the idea that maybe they can trust you with something actually real. They give you something which is, they kind of put something out on the table, a little feeler. It's a little conversational ploy, because they're saying, well, let's see if they can catch this and what they'll do with it. And so I'm very sensitive to that. And if somebody's trying to kind of feel me out, are you an idiot, if you will, you can suddenly move that conversation and that level of that conversation to a whole new place, right? But oftentimes, unfortunately, most times, it kind of does the other way. You run into somebody who's a little unconscious and a little bit caught up in themselves, and they've got a lot of fantasies going on, and they want to run you around and talk about financials or something. And so I'm like, okay, fine, we'll go off talking about this thing. We'll spin in these little circles. But I'm very rapidly developing a subroutine to just talk to them. It's just okay, we got a little, okay, this is what they want to hear. No, you do this, you do that, do the other, no, and just don't bother me. And then I can just sit back there and watch it all happen and watch it all kind of unfold while this thing in the background says, yeah, well, yeah, oh yeah, those Yankees, whatever. To the level I have to do that, or I'm able to do that, that's the level of integrity. That's why I wanted to bring it back. One of my favorite words is you find out what level of integrity that person has. How real are they? And the realer they are, the harder it is to keep up with them. The harder it is you really have to, when you're talking to a real person, like when Margaret and I first met and we kind of talked for hours, and we kind of really understood that this was another real person. We were having an actual real conversation. That's not easy. Now you're really talking to somebody. Now you've got to really kind of reveal yourself. You've got to be a little vulnerable. You've got to see how that person interacts with your actual world, with your actual persona, with who you are. And so a conversation with integrity is much more enjoyable, but it's also much more invigorating. It's much more pleasurable. It demands something of you. You have to be real too. To have a real conversation, and you have to risk a few things. Risk being, sort of a little vulnerable in a real conversation. But when there's no integrity, spin it. Here you go. Here, play with this ball of yarn while I do other things in the background.
Well, the definition of integrity.
That's a good place to start.
Is the quality of being honest and having strong principles.
I take issue with that, though.
Okay.
That is the definition.
All right. Can I finish?
Yeah,
okay.
Please.
Being honest is the foundation of this. It also means a state of being whole.
Much more.
Entire, a wholeness, not bits or pieces. Undivided or complete, a state of being also unimpaired and soundness. So when you look at it in terms of being whole, and you're able to communicate to somebody through that wholeness, is very different from communicating to someone who is in fragments. In other words, if they are truly in an ego, you get ego fragments. Maybe that's the best way to put it. Tolle had always said that, you never know who you're going to engage with. It could be someone in the house, but when they come down the stairs in the morning, is this the happy person that you knew? Or do they come down and they're grumpy? There are many, many, many different aspects to a human being. So integrity is responding not from the pieces, the aspects, the projections, the idea or the roles of who you think you are, but from yourself, your deeper self, as Tolle puts it. To being yourself for Tolle is you must be your deeper self, your truer one. There's no role, there's no pretending. And when you stop that, you start living.
So I love that, because what you've just said basically is that the roles people play and all the identities that they put on them, all the aspects, all the various, those are all lacking one thing. They're lacking integrity. They are not the whole. They aren't even, they're pretending to be the whole, but they, as you said, every morning or every 10 minutes, they can change. You suddenly have a person who 10 minutes ago was your best buddy and now they're a raging lunatic.
Right.
And then 10 minutes later they want to be your best buddy again. And you're like, yeah, it's a little nutty. And when you know people like that, people you have to walk on eggshells, right? Because the slightest little thing sets them off. Or people with whom the conversation always revolves around various aspects of their ego. It's what have I done and what I'm going to do and how I'm, structuring my 401k or whatever the hell it is, or the sports team ball that they're doing, or just, they want you to play a game with them, mainly agree with them. Everything they're doing is exactly the right thing and you should really be thanking me that I'm here telling you all about it. And they also want you to, become, in many ways, join their team, be on my side kind of thing. They want you to, nothing that you're bringing to the conversation is of any value except as it relates to their persona. You can't direct it in any way. You can't say, well, have you thought of this? Oh, that's a big no-no, because now you're what do you mean? I'm already perfect. I don't need any advice, that kind of thing. So you learn very quickly that these fragments have no integrity. They are not honest. That's a good way of putting it.
Well, there's no coherence.
Also no coherence. Yeah.
So you get a dissonance where the internal is at one level of frequency and then the outward expression is something different. So you have dissonance then. And people are very sensitive to that. They know when someone's not speaking completely honestly, or if they feel like this is a fragment of something that he's spinning.
Well, and dissonance is also, phoniness. When you listen to a symphony and there's a note that's wrong and it sounds off key, it sounds false. We say that's a false note. Somebody hit the wrong note and it's jarring. It's discordant. Dissonance is even more than that. Somebody wants to tell you this is who I am, but yet you can see that they aren't that thing. That they're trying to put something over on you. You can feel that they're trying to, they want you to do something. So they want to get something from you. So they're telling you, let's say, maybe what you want to hear or what they think you want to hear, so that you'll do the thing that they want you to do. And they're very gleefully kind of thinking that I'm putting one over on you. And you can see all this. This is all laid out in front of you, these machinations and these kind of false notes. And the dissonance is when you can see the motivation and they want you to pretend that you can't. It's the idea that you have to play the game so that you're even though it's obvious that I've got 3.5 inches of powder pancake makeup on, and every time I smile, there's like a fault line running through my face. No, you want to say, oh yes, you look wonderful today. No, you don't. No, you don't. You look like you're about to fall apart. But that whole idea of supporting, it's the wonderful fairy tale of the emperor's new clothes, right? Everyone has to say to the emperor, "Oh, your new clothes look wonderful." The tailor he says, of course, and again using their phoniness against them, he says, "Well, this cloth is so special that only those very wise and very, very sophisticated can see it." And those who are stupid and dull and uncouth, they won't see anything. And everyone says, "Oh, I can see it. It's the finest cloth I've ever seen." And it takes until the integrity of the child pierces it all, and the tailor is revealed as just having put one over on them, but the emperor is running around naked. Well, that's the dissonance. You can see that the emperor is naked, but if they want you to pretend that the fragment is the reality. And that has no integrity. That's not of the whole.
Right. You're believing in the story that you were given without having any affirmation of your own sight and touch. You just want to believe the story. And that, unfortunately, is what a lot of us do, because you want to believe a certain story.
Well, that's another thing, yeah, confirmation bias.
Right, and it has to do with one's own identity. If it's an ego identity, in other words, if you believe that this role is who you are, you are very open to either manipulation by others as well as yourself, because you believe the role should be a certain way and it can't deviate from that. It must be this way. And when reality hits and something else happens, what is your response? Are you going to embrace the fact that truth and honesty is telling you this? Or are you going to try to lie to yourself that, well, no, it's got to be this way because we've been thinking this way for years, for decades, for the whole society has been built this way. It's got to be this way.
It's got to be this way.
We've put so much time and effort and resources and lives into it. It can't be any other way.
Right.
And it's sad because at that point your personal integrity is being almost fragmented. Do you believe this, but you're going to act this other way? Is that really what you want to do? Because the integrity of being able to be whole and respond from a place of pure honesty and experience is so valuable. That is our human experience. And every person has slightly different perceptions. It's something else that can be added, a piece of the puzzle of what is this world.
Absolutely. So, I wanted to go back. You mentioned something earlier in the part of this conversation in the beginning about integrity, and you mentioned that it was basically being whole and being nothing is. It all hangs together. It's of a piece. And the word that occurred to me, and I wrote it down at that moment, was the shalom. Yes. People hear shalom and they think it's just like, hi, how you doing? It's like aloha. It's not exactly aloha. It's not exactly just a greeting. Shalom is oftentimes translated as peace. And it is certainly a peace, but it has to do mostly with wholeness. Shalom is wishing you to be whole. And another translation, and I think a much more truer one, is nothing missing, nothing broken.
Right.
Integrity. You could be saying, instead of shalom to somebody, you could be saying integrity. And people would go to you, weird. But in truth, the peace that shalom is talking about is the peace of wholeness, of being complete, and of being content. And this is much closer to my definition, maybe, and the second definition of integrity: to be whole, to be complete, to be of one piece, of one accord, is another way of putting it, which is another sort of reference back to at least the New Testament. When everyone is all together and we are of one mind, we are of one accord, we are a unit, we have a group which has integrity, which has one heart, one vibration, one frequency. All of our energies are in synergy. They're in harmony. And this is again going back to dissonance. When you have a dissonant note, it's disharmonious. It fights against one fights against the other. But when you have a symphony where all the notes are harmonious, where they all kind of go together, it makes a whole. It has, again, integrity. So shalom is something, nothing missing, nothing broken. The other interesting word, which is sort of conflated with integrity, is sincerity. And sincerity is, the root word actually comes from Latin, and sincere means without wax, which God knows why, but it was referring to the fact that if I believe it was ceramic, was fired, and if it had cracks from being fired, you could fix them, you could kind of paper them over with wax, and people would say that this wasn't sincere. It would still work, it would still hold water, but it wasn't a good pot. It would fall apart. Didn't have integrity. But a good vessel that had been fired would be sincere, would be without wax. It would have integrity. It would be strong. It would be whole. Again, nothing missing, nothing broken. Shalom is what occurred to me. And if we go back a little bit, I don't want to get too far away from Tolle. He starts to say, about the things that people are kind of concerned with, all these different ego fragments. If you want to start thinking about, or moving away from that, not thinking about it, thinking is part of their fragments, if you will. If you want to start moving away from that, he says, watch a plant, a tree or a flower, or watch an animal. And because why? Because those presences have a single frequency. The frequency of a tree, or the frequency of a forest, has a great deal of integrity, has a great deal of sincerity. A tree is just a tree, and it doesn't care if you don't like it, or if you want it to be a different tree, or if you want this tree to have fruit on it. No, I'm just a tree. But in that just a tree, there's a shalom. There's a nothing missing, nothing broken. I am a whole thing, and we give it the name tree, but if you just take the name away and experience that presence, and I'm not talking about hugging trees here, but I mean the presence of that vibration, which is that manifestation into reality of this tree, has a very sincere, very integral, very its energy is not looking to you to validate it. It isn't trying to pretend. It doesn't have any other motivations. It just is. Right. And there's a lot of, you can look at that and say, this tree is just a tree, and it reminds me of my being, what I really am, without all the thoughts and all the other stuff, the emotions, everything piled on top. Similarly, people with their pets or with an animal of any type, you look at an animal and say, well, it's going and getting food, it's doing its function, it's killing and being killed, it's being is itself. Animals don't have pretensions. They aren't coming in and trying to pretend to be something else. A fox doesn't come in and try to be a bird. It just is a fox, and it has a certain vibration. Yes, every fox is different, but they all are exactly who they are. And they don't hold on to either the past or the future. They just are in the moment of now. And if you start to understand that, the sincerity of an animal, the sincerity of a tree, the integrity of an animal, the integrity of a tree reminds you of your own that you're neglecting, you know.
Well, it's life and life force in different forms. And yes, it's all energy, and energy is neither created or destroyed, but it presents itself in another form. So to understand the life form that's in front of you, whether it is a plant or an animal, they are what they are. They do not pretend to be anything else. There are animals like the birds will mimic sounds in human speech, but it doesn't mean that they necessarily think like a human being. They are their own, and they enjoy mimicry. So that's where the human story can come in and put a motive on things, projecting a motive on things. And probably this is why they always said that humanity is the sick animal, because we keep pretending to be something else instead of human. So being your deeper self, for Tolle it means interacting from a position of no thought, which is pretty much what the animals do. The interaction with you is just from a being state. They're not calculating things and planning out the rest of their day.
No.
They're right in the moment. You came home, good, feed me. You know, this is being in the moment.
Yes, you know, the sincerity of an overweight cat. They don't. And here's the thing, and maybe, you know, I think Tolle mentions this. He thinks that sometimes dogs, and with their long association with humans and cats, can develop these sort of personality traits and kind of have an ability to pretend a bit. But in truth, their basic needs, and you see this in infants too. An infant is not anything but itself. When they're hungry, they're hungry. When they're tired, they're tired. When they're sad, they cry. When they're happy, they laugh. You know, in a situation where you shouldn't be making all this loud noise, they'll make loud noise because they want to do it, and they just do it. The being may not be, you know, it may not take into any consideration what's going on around it, because it's immature. And that may not be true of an animal. With some maturity, they are situationally aware, but what they are is always themselves, and a child is too. That's why in the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, the honest one, the integral, the one with integrity that sees through it, is the child, because the clear eyes of the heart, without any pretensions, pierce this fakery and this insincerity and this non-integrity. So, as you mentioned, a cat, at the end of the day when you walk in, they're not saying, well, you must be tired, and look, it's so late and it's raining outside. No, feed me.
Right.
I'm hungry over here. You know? and we appreciate animals for their integrity, for their honesty. When a cat or a dog sits in your lap and wants to be petted, and then, you know, purrs or licks your hand or whatever, you're saying, you're reminded of the sincerity of that. I want to be petted. I'm going to get in your lap and you're going to pet me. And you're like, but I've got to do my taxes. And they're like, pet me. And by the way, feed me, and then pet me, and then feed me, and then pet me some more. And you're like, okay, I guess I'll do that now. But at the basic, honest integrity level, you say, yeah, in this moment of now, what I have to do is be me and be real. The cat, like a real conversation with another, like a real conversation with a person who has integrity, requires something of you, an honesty, that ability to be hungry and want to be fed and just want to be petted and want to purr or sleep or do whatever, all these things, we kind of, if you're all caught up in your ego fragments, you kind of envy. They say, well, look at them, they're just sleeping, and they're just fat, just lying out, and just, they're like kids when they're asleep, they're drooling and they're everywhere and you go, so how, that's so beautiful, it's so cute. If you lie there with your mouth open drooling, people don't think it's just as cute, but the point is their ability to just be in the moment of now and do exactly what needs to be at that moment it becomes an enviable thing for this fragmentary, ego-driven, pretending kind of, oh, it's this, oh, it's that, oh, it's the other thing. And you see that and you go, wow, man, they're just lying there in the sun, just being.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, wow, that's so honest, so integral.
It's clean.
It's clean, and it evokes that cleanliness from you.
Right. There is no noise or static coming out of them. They are just who they are. I think watching a cat stretch is quite a
perfect example.
Yeah, quite a feat. The way they do the stretch, and it's a progressive thing, and it's all along their tail and their spine, and then it goes out to their paws, and then even the tips of their ears.
You can see the energy moving through them. It's just honest.
It's just this complete stretch, and they enjoy it completely. And then they come back to center, and they look around going, okay, what's going on?
Hungry. Feed me.
Yeah, then that's when all the other, I think I could use a nosh. Mm-hmm.
And they're not concerned that, here's a cat that should be 7 pounds, and they're like 30. And their fat has fat, and they're just, and it does not, you see, all these things are funny, but they're incredibly integral. They're incredibly honest. When you, as Tolle says, watch any plant or animal and let it teach you acceptance of what is. Yeah, I'm 15 pounds overweight. Yep. It doesn't matter. It is what it is. Yeah, I'm hungry, and I was hungry yesterday. I'm going to be hungry tomorrow. But I don't care about yesterday or tomorrow. I'm hungry right now.
Right. Well,
feed me.
They're not projecting forward or even necessarily remembering what has happened a few weeks ago.
And this is a great idea, a great example. There are shows on TV where you have these vets, and there's many of them. We used to watch one quite a bit. But you would say what this person would say about animals is an animal is never crippled.
Mm-hmm.
No, an animal, and sometimes they have terrible injuries and they have to have surgery, and you'll have to remove a whole limb, from an animal, a cat or a dog, and they're three-legged cat or three-legged dog, and you say for a person, if you lose your arm, you're crippled for life, and how can I go on? And I have to deal with everything every day, and everyone's always looking at me and thinking. And the cat or the dog is like, yep, I can still get around. I can still see. I can still smell. I'm still hungry.
Yeah.
I can run like a Dickens on 3 legs.
On 3 legs.
I'm not crippled.
Nope.
They can by chance, some disease or injury, they lose an eye. And you think of a person, you lose your eye, oh my God, I can't see. Or you lose both eyes, you lose your vision. And you're crippled for life. An animal is never crippled. Why? Because it just is. It accepts what is. I could see yesterday. I can't see today. Yesterday doesn't matter, and tomorrow is unknown. In this particular moment of now, my world is dark. I still am. I'm hungry. I want to be loved. I want to love something. I want to be petted. I can still talk. I can still feel. I can still do all the things I could do before. I just can't. I can't do one thing. Okay, that's who I am right now.
Yeah.
You don't identify, and people say this all the time about cancer kids. Kids who have cancer don't identify me by my disease. Oh, you're just a cancer kid. No, I'm a person who happens to be ill right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That's the real moment of now.
Mm-hmm.
And next moment, I could be completely cured. And then I'll be a person who used to be sick, and I'm not sick anymore. But it doesn't. The ego says, "Oh, I'm damaged. I'm broken. I'll never be good again. I'm less than. I'm special. I'm all these things which are not integrity. They're not sincere. They're pretend things. Instead, you just say, today I'm sick, and in a moment from now I might feel a little better, and I'll go do the thing I want to do.
Right. It's a condition that you either identify with or you do not. If you identify with it, it means that you're playing a role. This idea of, you are the cancer kid, so you've got to be handled this way or spoken to this way, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that did not define the kid himself. So being aware of the fact that there are certain roles that you are projecting on other people or expecting for yourself, just to be aware of that is a major thing, because that role is not you. It's something that you're participating with, but it's not you. And that basically takes your integrity and separates something out, saying, well, no, this is this. You have to be the cancer kid, and the integrity is the way we're treating you, because we decide what your integrity should be, the pathway. So you have to be vigilant in catching yourself engaging in a role. And the best way, one of the best examples, is how you interact with other people. How do you communicate with other people? When you're speaking to someone who is very poor, let's say, or shabbily dressed, or someone who's supposed to be like a menial worker, do you speak to them differently than someone who you think has power, is rich, or is driving a fancy car, or, the way they're dressed? Because if you change the way you interact with them, that means that your personal integrity is a little fragmented.
Very much so, yes.
So catching that is key, because integrity at that point is you must live from the point of wholeness, and you will interact with people from that wholeness. That wholeness doesn't require thought. Communicating with someone from a thought-based idea of who you are is very different from communicating with someone who is speaking with you heart to heart. Because when you are whole, you really wind up speaking from your heart.
Yes, absolutely. And what you mentioned earlier, I mean, in the cancer wards is exactly what Tolly's talking about here. The very first thing the very first illusion you get is somehow that you're special. And it's very, very seductive. because people will treat you differently and they will try and do things for you. But all they're really doing is handing you an identity, feeding an ego fragment, and in essence pushing you away from who you are. The most honest thing about the kids that we found in the cancer wards, and Christopher and many others, is that they came to a realization that they were not their disease. They were people who, particularly at this moment, had a condition. It was a circumstance. It was just where they were now. Yes, you have to be very careful. You don't deny where you are. Yes, right now, my body has a problem. That's not who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to mention this too, because in the context of what you're doing with the little kids, Margaret works with little children, and there's a wonderful exercise that they do. The kids are given these kind of stickers or colors or whatever, and they're allowed to, in essence, use them to identify how they're feeling. But the exercise is to say that I feel angry. It's a condition. I feel sad. It's a condition. And people oftentimes say, and they're just coached to say it throughout their lives, oh, I am angry.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between I feel angry and I am angry seems very subtle, but it's very much the difference between having integrity and being a fragment.
Mm-hmm.
When you are angry, that means you're identifying with anger. When I am sick, or I am the cancer kid, you're no longer you. You've allowed a fragment, a thought form, a pain body, an expression, some sort of entity to assume the role of saying that this is who you are. You're this special, untouchable, cancer-ridden child who needs to be handled with kid gloves, and everything should be done for me, and I'm so incredibly different from everybody else. I'm shut away. And no. When an animal, and Tolle says it here, when an animal is living, it just lives. When an animal is dying, they just die. It's unfortunate, but in our family, one of the people we know, they just lost a dearly beloved pet. Well, that's sad. But in the way that happened, that particular animal, very honestly, with great integrity, just passed away. When you watch an animal live its life, it has certain things happen to it, and that's just where they are right then. Then one day we'll be feeling good because maybe they're ill, and the next day they're not feeling so good, back and forth. None of it identifies the animal. It just says where they are in their life. And when you come to the end of a life, an animal just lets go very easily. They were never crippled all the way through their life. They were never not themselves. They just were having a condition. That condition might have been, some exigent circumstance. I don't feel well today. I feel sick. I feel whatever it is. But the living happens anyway, and the being happens throughout all of it. When a kid has a cancer or any kind of life-altering disease, we do all the wrong things in some regards. We tell them how special they are and how different they are and how pushed away from society they are, and how they've got to get back and they've got to be better and they've got to do all these things, and it just gives all the wrong messages. You rip them into shreds. And that's the same thing is done with kids when I am angry. I am this. Well, you can't just be this. You have to be that. You can't be angry now. You can't be angry then. You can only be angry here. You can only be angry there. No, I feel angry. Okay, put up your angry sticker. Give space for being angry, for feeling angry at this moment. Just let it be. And the thing that you tell them is, yes, right now you feel whatever it is. I feel happy, I feel sad, I feel angry, I feel fearful, whatever it is. Give it space, let it come up, see it, realize that that's how you feel at this moment, and that the next moment will be different. And you can choose at this moment, say, well, I feel angry, I just want to be left alone for a little while. I want to give it some space. And then when I don't feel angry anymore, I'm going to come back and we're going to do something else. Whatever that is. That is the same thing for some child that is just feeling a little angry as some child that has a life-threatening disease. If we just said to them, yes, right now, yes, you have a terrible sickness. We're going to do everything we can to help you get better. But in this very moment, you're still you. You're still exactly the same person and being that you always were. You just happen to have a condition right now. And if we're able to do something about it, we may be able to get rid of that condition. But you are still you. And having to learn that on your own is difficult.
Teaching that the difference between what happens to you and who you are two different things. And for a child, teaching this early is a wondrous foundation for this person. If you want to teach integrity, having this as your foundation will allow for growth, personal growth for the child. So, understanding, first of all, that life is difficult, okay? A lot of people want to teach children that, as long as you do the right thing, nothing bad will ever happen to you. So let me teach you how to do the right thing. This is what you got to do. And when reality takes a step into your life, and suddenly something happens that you had no control over, the first question is, what did I do to deserve this? And to understand that you're not in absolute control of your life. And frankly, the plants and the animals around you, they know this. They know they're not in absolute control. But humans kid themselves into believing that they can control every part of their situation. Everything. So, what does that do? It creates hell. Because you can't control this. We saw a lot of personal hell in the pediatric cancer wards, okay? Every parent there was blaming themselves for their child's cancer in some way. What did I miss? How did this happen? Could I have prevented it? And eventually you get to the point of understanding that, no, you really couldn't. You know, you might try to go after what you think was a carcinogen, all right? But chasing after that idea that you're going to be the righteous one, and I'm going to find out if this carcinogen is what gave my child cancer, takes you away from the moment. And in that moment, your child's looking at you. He's looking at you because you're his father or his mother. It's usually the fathers, by the way, that do this.
True.
And I need you here by me, Dad. Just be with me. Just be with me. But the child already knows that he's fighting something. And he just wants someone there. Doesn't want to be alone in this battle. There's a thought, right? And the father's thinking, okay, I'm going to charge ahead and fight this thing, and that's like, no. It's not about you. It's not about making you feel better because somehow you feel responsible for your child's cancer. It's not about you. It's about the love that has formed because you're family. He is your child, and you are his father or you are his mother, and he loves you. He needs you to hold his hand going through the simplest of things sometimes, or sometimes it is just the most painful process that they have to go through to treat. And all they want is you to be there with them. It's not alone. So I'm going to go back to the original statement of life is difficult. You need to accept the fact that life is difficult. Because the greatest difficulty, actually, is in the mental resistance to whatever it is that has happened that you believe shouldn't have happened. For us, it's, how did he get cancer? Well, he shouldn't have cancer. How many people have turned to me and goes, it's just not natural. Children should not die before their parents. It's a nice thought, is what I always said. Because the reality was standing in front of them. So, the acceptance that life is difficult. All right, but you don't have to, what would be the word? You don't project on this and say, oh no, it's all going to go bad because it's all difficult. It's like, no, that has nothing to do with it. When I say difficult, it means sometimes you got to work and sweat, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad or good. It just is.
That's perfect. Exactly right. When you say life is difficult, people think life is bad.
Right.
Because they equate difficulty with a judgment call. But that's the egoic. Tolle says it here again. If you just go back to the quote, it means to be one, to be yourself, to be real. To let it teach you, let this animal or this plant teach you how to live and how to die. Because the acceptance of what is, the surrender to the now, you say, well, life is difficult, but not all the time. It just happens to be that you have to accept that you cannot control the moment of now. You can be in it, and you control one thing. We've said this many times. You can control your reaction to it. You can control that, and then you can control your response. Exactly. Your response to it, and then you can control one other thing. You have this great superpower. The isness of now happens. Life is difficult, so you don't get to control everything. In fact, that's part of the suffering, is people think they can control, but something happens. And the very first thing you can say is, it is. Accept it. That doesn't mean that you just lay down and die, but you have to accept that this is where you are, but it's not who you are. It's where you are.
Yes, these are the conditions that I am dealing with right now.
Right.
And Tolle's phrase, which I thought was wonderful, was to have a surrendered relationship with the present moment. That brings you to that stillness state.
Right.
So a surrendered relationship with the present moment. What does that mean? It means that you realize that you are in the happenings of this moment. But you are aware that it's not you, and you will be making some kind of decision. You may be there to observe, but you're also there to consciously choose your response. It's not an automatic reaction, but a conscious response. And being in that stillness state allows you the integrity, sense of well-being that can arise from being in that wholeness of you and observing. You'll know what to do in that moment.
Margaret does this. She puts all the things together, and I love it because it's exactly correct. The surrendering to the moment of now means exactly that. it is exactly where you are. And the other thing Tolle says, and I love when he says this, you're exactly in the right place. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Be. And then you still get to do two things. You have to accept where you are. You're observing the moment of now. It's happening to you right now. This is where you are. Live it. And in that moment, in saying that, in surrendering to the moment of now, you open up the pathways to grace. People say, well, what am I going to do? You don't have to think about what you're going to do.
Right.
You may do nothing. But if you know that you're being in the moment of now, and you're open to accepting it, there's this amazing phenomena that is the echo of the Spirit in the temporal reality that we are in. In the moment of now, grace, that which is that connection to the eternal, because when you're in the moment of now, you're also in the eternal moment.
Right.
Your connection to the eternal gives you you in the being, what to do. And it isn't, oh gosh, what am I going to do, what am I going to do? No, it comes to you. You're basically exactly where you're supposed to be. The isness of now is happening to you. It's happening to everybody all at the same time. We're all doing the moment of now. But in that particular moment of now, the isness of now is happening to you because you are here. And if you say, yep, I accept, I surrender to the moment of now, grace comes in. You have this amazing channel of grace because you're open. The frequency of grace comes in, and you know exactly what to look at right at that moment of now. You say, this is what I'm here to see. This person in front of me, or the thing that I'm here to do right now, is incredibly important.
Mm-hmm. Your spirit arises.
Your spirit arises.
In the stillness state, without all the noise, the cacophony of emotions and thoughts. In that still point, you can hear spirit arising. And there's an incredible sense of peace that comes over you.
The shalom.
And once, because you are in that wholeness and in that peace, grace does come in, and so does divine wisdom.
And integrity.
Because you are in that integral moment, you are whole in that moment, and you go, I listen. Please give me the words how to handle the situation. And you handle the situation moment by moment. You cannot project forward what you're going to do next. It's right at that moment. And it is very precious, very precious.
Indeed. And this precious moment of now, we have to bring this show to a close, but we're going to do it with integrity. So you go first.
Okay. I'm Margaret.
And I'm Michael.
And thank you for listening.